Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of Unraveling What the Bible Has to Say About the End Times. We continue today from where we left off last time, where we looked at the book of Revelation and especially the seven seals and saw how that paralleled with the outline on end time events that Jesus had laid out in the Gospels and especially Matthew 24. Today we will go a little deeper into one of those events, which is the Great Tribulation, the period when uh, tribulation or persecution is expected to happen. And we'll specifically try to look at how long is this going to be. Let's try to understand a little bit more about the Great Tribulation. And now we hear a lot about the Great Tribulation. We hear the 7 years of Great Tribulation, but not everybody knows more than that. How long really is it going to be? Is it 7 years? And what's going to happen in that? Why is it called the Great Tribulation? So let's try to find the answers to all those questions today. So let's get right into the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 20 onwards. There is the 70 weeks prophecy. Now, here Daniel talks about a period of time, 70 weeks, and there's a set of things that are prophesied to happen in these 70 weeks. Now, first of all, before we get into this, we should know what the week signifies. What's the unit of time? Is it actually weeks, as in 7 days, or does it represent something more? Now, if you look at the original word translated as weeks, it means sevens. So it's actually 70 sevens. Now, sevens can mean 7 days, or it can mean 7 years. It can mean seven of any unit of time. So, what unit of time is it here for this prophecy? That's not very difficult to find out because Daniel splits his 70 weeks into primarily two periods of time, 69 weeks and then 1 week. Now, the 69 weeks are in the past. Daniel talks about specific start and end events for that 69 weeks. And it's easy for us to find out either from the Bible or from historical records, even Wikipedia, uh, w- when those events took place, the marker events, the beginning and the end. And based on that, we can find out what the sevens in this prophecy is. Is it 7 years? And then we apply it to the last seven. And that last seven, that 69 plus one, that one is what's really relevant from an end times perspective. So let's get right in, and we'll look into the book of Daniel. So these are the references that we will look at today. So this is the split up, right? 69 sevens and 1 sevens. Is it years? If it is years, it's 69 into 7. That's 483 years for the first part, and 1 into 7, 7 years for the second part. We're going to confirm now if it really is years. Right. So now, what are the beginning and end times spoken about here for the 69 sevens or the 483 periods of time? The first is the going forth of a command to restore Jerusalem, right? Uh, and that ends with Messiah the Prince. And it goes on to say that after this period, the Messiah the Prince is going to be cut off. Now, the Messiah the Prince, it talks about Jesus. That's, I think, quite clear. It says Jesus is going to be cut off, indicating his death on the his crucifixion or his death. So we know when that is. We know Jesus lived on the earth for 33 years. Uh, so we'll see if the time period falls somewhere there. Now, when did the command to restore Jerusalem go out? This is not difficult to do. We read about this in the book of Ezra, where we read in Ezra chapter 7 that in the seventh year of the reign of King Artaxerxes, the king issues a decree, or rather, he commissions Ezra to go and rebuild the city of Jerusalem. Now, remember, the nation of Israel doesn't exist now because it was taken captivity, and the nation of Israel, the city of Jerusalem, lies in ruins. So Ezra has been commissioned to go back and rebuild Jerusalem, restore Jerusalem. Now, if you look up, it's there in the public sphere. King Artaxerxes, we know when he started his reign from, and if we calculate when the seventh year of his rule is, it comes to about 456 or 457 BC, right? So that's the starting point here. You add 483 years to 456, 457 BC, takes us to 27 AD. Now, 27 AD is certainly within the period of time when Jesus was walking on the earth. Now, it gets even more interesting if we apply a 360-day year, because if you read the book of Genesis and when the account of the flood is given, it's mentioned there that a year it uses a year of 360 days. So if we apply that, if the biblical year in the Old Testament is 360 years, and then you start calculating from 456 or 457 BC, it takes us actually to 33 AD, which historians say is the year when Jesus Christ actually died or was crucified. Now, what's interesting is also that the Bible says in the book of Ezra that it's in the month of Nisan that this command went, and it's also in the month of Nisan that Jesus was crucified. So uh, it's quite likely, we probably don't have the exact evidence, but it's quite likely that this was fulfilled not just to the year, but even to the month, and maybe even more. Right? All right, so this makes it quite clear to us that it is talking about years. The sevens in this prophecy is 7 years. Now, that's good. So now that means that the 1 7 here is also 7 years. So what happens then? All right. What's going to happen in this 7 years? What does this prophecy talk about? Now, there's a specific start for this. The starting point for the 7 years. Now, bear in mind that there's an unknown period of time between the 69 sevens and this last seven, right? It's not in sequence. We're currently living in this interim period. The last seven gets kicked off when the Antichrist confirms a treaty, a 7 year treaty with many nations. That's what we read here. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. So we saw already 1 week is 7 years. He here refers to the Antichrist. That's what the context says. Now, the Antichrist has not revealed himself yet as the Antichrist. The world doesn't know that he's the Antichrist. He's, uh, and we'll see more about this Antichrist in a few minutes, but he confirms the covenant. So he's got a part to play in this covenant. It could be a peace treaty, uh, and it's a multi-party peace treaty. So it's likely multiple nations. I think the nation of Israel is going to be part of this. The Bible doesn't specifically say so here, but whether you like it or not, almost all the end time prophecies revolve around the nation of Israel. So most likely a peace treaty for 7 years, including multiple countries, with Israel being one of them. All right. Now, what happens after that? This is what it says. Um, in the middle of this, right? Uh, in the in the middle of the week, so in the middle of these 7 years, that's after 3.5 years, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. He's talking about the Antichrist. He shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate. Does that ring a bell? If you remember Matthew 24, when Jesus spoke about what's going to happen in the end times, he referred back to the book of Daniel. This is what Jesus says, Matthew 24, um, verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then flee. That's what Jesus says. Flee from wherever you are. Don't turn back because it's going to unleash something terrible. The abomination of desolation, the same words used here, uh, it's referring to what the Antichrist is going to do here in the temple. He's going to do something detestable in the Jewish temple, something abominable, and perhaps he's going to set something up there in the temple, in the most holy place, maybe an idol of another god, or he's going to destroy it, place something there that desecrates the temple, and he's going to stop the sacrifices that are happening at that time in the Jewish temple. Now, mind you, today the Jewish temple does not exist. It has to come up first before this can happen. So we're certainly not in the 7 year period today. Right. All right. What else? Now, this period after 3.5 years, when this event in the temple takes place, that's when the world knows that this person is the Antichrist. That's when we know for sure the Antichrist reveals himself to the world, or at least to those who are aware. Now, mind you, there were a lot of prophecies about Jesus Christ, the Messiah, coming to Israel, but not everybody recognized the signs of the times. A lot of people did not recognize or did not want to recognize that Jesus was the Messiah. The same is likely going to happen with the Antichrist as well. Those who want to, those who are open to it, will recognize. Those who don't want to will shut their eyes to it. So we are interested in this 3.5 years. That's when the Great Tribulation really happens. There is a 7 year period. Nothing really much happens from a tribulation perspective for the first 3.5 years. It's a period of 3.5 years when the tribulation actually happens. Tribulation means trouble. And what is this trouble? Let's look at what the Antichrist is going to do. So during this 3.5 years, the Antichrist, as we saw, desecrates the Jewish temple, stops the offerings happening there. Daniel 7, 25, 23, 25 talks a little bit more about this. The Antichrist is going to speak against God. It says he's going to speak great pompous words against the God of the Bible. Now, it's possible that the Antichrist doesn't believe in God at all, or it's possible that the Antichrist believes in another God that's different from the God of the Bible. In either case, he speaks pompous words against the God of the Bible. Uh, the Antichrist, this person is going to represent a kingdom or a reign or a rule that's different from the other kingdoms on earth. That's what we read about in Daniel 7. How is it going to be different? We don't exactly know. Uh, maybe it's a religious kingdom, or maybe it's a governmental kingdom which is different from the other governments in some way. We don't know, but it says that the Antichrist represents a kingdom that's different from the others, and he's going to unleash violence and chaos across the world. Now, uh, all right, the next one is interesting. The Antichrist is going to persecute God's people. Daniel 7:25. Uh, it says that then the saints shall be given into his hand for a period of time. This is a remarkable verse. The saints, which is God's people, will be given into the hands of the Antichrist for a specified period of time. God allows this to happen. God is still in control, but God allows this to happen. This is completely in line with what we read about in Matthew and the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, the fifth seal, we saw that the martyrs, those who had given their lives up for Jesus, are crying out to God, saying, God, how much longer? And God says, wait little more, right? The number has to be fulfilled of those who get martyred. God has allowed it for a period of time. There's a specific uh, period. Also, Matthew 24, Jesus says there's going to be persecution like has never happened before in the history of mankind. It's greater than what Emperor Nero unleashed on the early Christians, greater than what we see under the Nazi rule, the Holocaust. It's going to be immense persecution, and primarily Christians, and I'd say Jews as well, Christians and Jews. All right. What's the speed of time? Now, here in Daniel 7, it says they're going to be given into the hand of the Antichrist for um, a time, times, and half a time. What's a time, time, and half a time? We read about this also in Daniel 12, where it says that from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, that's the start of the 3.5 years period, and the abomination of desolation is set up, right? There's something set up in the most holy place, something abominable. There shall be 1,290 days, right? Now, let's put all this together. 1,290 days is 3.5 years. Whether you take a 360-day year or a 365-day year, it's 3.5 years. Time times and half a time. A time is 1, times is 2. So 1 plus 2 plus half a time is 3.5 times, right? So if the time there refers to the year, so that's 3.5 years. So we see that there's multiple angles from where we are able to arrive at the fact that we're talking about 3.5 years. 3.5 years is the period of relevance from an end time great tribulation perspective. Now, the Bible, the evidence in the Bible seems to point very clearly to the fact that there is going to be this period of persecution. And no country is going to be spared, right? Christians and Jews all across the world are going to face this intense and immense persecution. Nobody is safe. Nobody can stay in a safe cocoon thinking that nothing's going to happen. Perhaps persecution isn't close to you and me today, perhaps in the country where you are, but things are going to change when this happens. We don't know how close that is, how soon that's going to happen. We could be quite close, or maybe we aren't. We don't know. But there's certainly a lot of end time prophecies getting fulfilled, especially the nation of Israel coming together. The next one to look forward to is, or to look out for rather, is the coming up of the temple in Jerusalem. All right. Now, in the next episode, we'll look into a little more on what happens in this 3.5 years. There's something known as the mark of the beast, and we'll also quickly look at what happens after that. Now, the Bible makes clear that there's this 3.5 year period where there's intense persecution. God allows it. When that's over, Jesus Christ comes on the clouds, and all those who believed in Jesus Christ, those who are alive and those who are dead, will rise up to meet with Jesus on the clouds. This event is also popularly called as the rapture. They're taken away from the earth. And then we read about this in the book of Revelation. After the seven seals, there's a seven trumpets, seven bowls. Essentially, God pours out his wrath on the earth. So God's people are not there on earth when God is pouring out his wrath on the earth. So we look at that and what happens after that in summary in the next episode. So until then, God be with you. Have a nice day.